G'day everybody, welcome back to the podcast for another week. Matt Walsh, Jake Michaels, Champion Data's Christian Joly here to talk all things footy for another week. It's a massive episode. We've got so much to get to. We're going to talk the Demons' continued surge up the ladder, look at North's poor showing against the Crows and dissect the Bulldogs' woes. Plus, Pendles, an update on the Saints, grand final flights, our favourite journeyman and so much more. Jake, good to speak with you. But first, I want something you noticed from round 10, please.
Well, as you know, I was up in Brisbane this past weekend for NRL Magic Round, just dipping my toes into the water of another sport.
You a big rugby league fan?
I'm not, in all honesty, I'm not. Footy's my number one sport, and rugby league probably doesn't crack the top 10 if we're being honest.
Jeez,
but I was up there for the event, and we had this idea at the beginning of the year to compare Magic Round with Gather Round, the two all-in-one place sort of footy extravaganzas. And we did I've done a big deep dive on the comparisons, the differences between the two events and sort of come to a conclusion as to which one is better. You can read that on ESPN.com.
Very good. /
AFL.
Well done.
Or
and NRL.
I think it might fall under both. So I won't spoil that, but I will just go into what I noticed being up there. So I was up there for the Brisbane-Geelong game on the Thursday night and stayed through. The two big takeaways from Magic Round compared to Gather Round, and this is not to say one is better or worse, just two things that I noticed. One was the contrast in demographic between the two events.
Okay.
Gather Round is primarily young kids, families, kids running around getting their face painted, make your own footy card. It's very much targeted to families. And you've been there before with your family, correct?
No, I went by myself, with work, and I vowed to take the family.
Because it was such a...
Did you notice that?
The same thing. Yeah.
So that was saying, whereas Magic Round was very different, much more targeted towards adults, 30-year-olds, boys on sort of boys' trips together.
Lads.
A lot of drinking, not as much stuff for the kids. Just, again, it's different. Not to say one's better, just two totally different markets. The other thing, which I'm going to give maybe a little knock to the AFL, but NRL fans wear their jumper with real pride. Every single person I'm honest, every single person in Brisbane was wearing a rugby league jumper over the weekend. Every single person.
Really?
It's not like that in footy at all. Even Gather Round, outside of game day, like at the ground, when do you ever see someone walking down the street?
It's not the most fashionable things.
But is any sporting jersey? Why is footy the only sport? We live in Melbourne where we have 9.5 teams, and we don't ever see anyone wearing a jersey outside of game day.
I find it happens in Perth a little bit.
As in they wear it more over there?
Yeah, more team gear in Perth. But I don't know. Melbourne, I think everyone's a bit sort of haughty-taughty and just...
You see basketball jerseys being worn far more than you do AFL jumpers here.
Here's a challenge for you. Be the change you want to see. Next Carlton game you go to, I want you to wear a jumper.
Well, this is it. So this is the conclusion I've sort of got to. So I think it's because there's this idea that in footy, AFL, if you're old enough to drive a car, you shouldn't be wearing
I've heard that point of view many times.
And I think that's why it turns people off. Kids, fine, go knock yourself out.
Yep.
Wear the whole kit, boots and all. But I think once you're an adult, you sort of looked at it like...
Full kit wanker?
Yeah, you're a wanker, mate. So I think that's why people don't do it. But I don't know, just a thought I had. But at the same, you point out this morning, basketball jerseys don't have sleeves, and they seem to be worn all the time. So, yeah, just two takeaways I had from spending the weekend up in Vegas, but thoroughly enjoyed it.
Great. Good to have you on the ground there, and at Gather Round as well. We do a lot of hard work, heavy lifting for the company.
I was there, yeah.
And it's nice to sort of see the fruits of your labour, because it's a great yarn, and you can see it at espn.com.au/AFL or NRL if you'd like as well. So good stuff from you. Christian, something you noticed from round 10.
We can stick to the same city, so Vegas. Charlie Cameron, I think we were talking pre-pod about, it's probably one of the best goal celebrations going around that we've probably ever had in the competition, really. He kicks a goal up at Gabba and you hear
Country Road
sort of played over the loudspeaker. But I noticed on the Friday, was it Thursday night?
Thursday night
game against Brisbane-Geelong, often the song gets sung well after it finishes playing on the loudspeaker, and it continues through to the centre bounce. So the centre bounce will happen, you still hear the crowd singing. And there was one centre bounce on Thursday night where Brisbane just took it and went straight away forward, and I don't know if they scored from the centre bounce, but they definitely got possession inside their forward 50. And I thought, that's a common sight to me. How often do the crowd still singing the Charlie Cameron song get to witness a Brisbane centre bounce clearance? It's almost like you can't lose a centre bounce clearance if the whole stadium's still singing a song. So I had a look at the centre bounce win percentage after a Charlie Cameron goal versus a Lions non-Charlie Cameron goal at the Gabba.
At the Gabba specifically?
Yeah, at the
Love
Gabba
it.
in the last 3 years since they've been
Well, they
playing
only
the song.
only play it there.
Well,
Yeah,
yes.
I could have included grand final day, but I sort of didn't want to get all technical. I think they did play it for grand final
played
day.
it grand
for
final
a couple, because I think they were a home team for one of the grand finals.
They might have... I think they might have just sung it, the fans.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, I remember hearing it, but might not have been out of the loudspeaker. But yeah, this is just the Gabba. Charlie Cameron kicks a goal, that song's playing. Brisbane will win the clearance, centre bounce clearance 57% of the time. If Charlie Cameron hasn't kicked a goal, so all other Brisbane Lions kick a goal, they've got a win rate of 47%. So about
It's a big
10%
jump.
higher. It's
10%
higher.
That's a
And that's a sort of 45 goals he's kicked in that time, and it's almost like
It's a decent
25
sample
odd,
size.
yeah,
Forward that
25
one
odd.
to useless AFL stats. They'll enjoy that.
I do like that. My question is, why is it allowed? And we love it. It's very unique. But why is it allowed to go on?
No, it doesn't. No,
That's
the
what I'm saying,
crowd
it's the
sings
crowd.
it.
It's just the crowd still singing the song.
You don't reckon the
No,
actual
they cut
song,
the
No,
song.
they-
You reckon the song's cut as they bounce the ball because
Yeah.
it goes right up to,
And then the crowd keeps going.
It's only
And I
the
reckon
crowd
that-
singing from
I
that point on.
reckon the amount of money given by the broadcast, I think it's a broadcasting thing. We don't want music playing once
Yeah,
the
well, of
bounce
course,
starts and
yeah.
interfering with
So-
audio, so it would be cut.
I was
just before the bounce.
convinced that it was, and even being there, I was convinced that they were still playing it past.
Very loud, aren't
past.
they?
Maybe not. Maybe you're right. Maybe it is just the Brisbane locals getting into the song.
Good stuff. Something I noticed, well, I'll come around to it, but it's actually a question for you guys, but also those at home listening. Feel free to let us know at Footy Tips on Twitter. At what point, if you're a supporter of a non-Victorian team, what's the win-loss your team has to be for you to say, I'm just going to book flights for that last Saturday in September, just in case?
At this point of the year,
Yeah. Or not even at this point of the year, but what's the win-loss that your team has to be at that you go, yeah, I'm going to do it just in case?
well, you could say 100%, but if you win, you can do it after one win.
No, I'm saying what's the win-loss?
I think you want to be. I want half the year to have been played.
Okay.
I think round 10's a fraction early, but at the same time, you're risking prices going up.
Especially if you're from Perth.
Well,
They've
that's
got-
it. Perth, sorry to cut you off, but Perth doesn't have the luxury of, say, Sydney, Brisbane, even or Adelaide, where you can drive to Melbourne if your team
Brisbane's
is playing.
a bit of a stretch.
You can drive from Brisbane to Melbourne. I've done it before. It's not a great trip, but it's a lot closer than doing it from Perth.
So the thing that I did notice was there was a screenshot sort of floating around of some Freo nuffs who
Yeah.
had decided to just pull the trigger on flights for September, just in case. So they're 9-1. They're looking pretty good. Won 9 in a row, and you had the stat like 20 of their last 22.
Yeah, it's 20, something like that.
Something like that.
Home and away games.
So they're obviously flying, and well, in order to fly from Perth to Melbourne, we've seen that the pointy end of seasons can cost you as much as sort of $1,500, $2,000 return.
Oh, and the
more.
rest. I remember 2018 grand final. I think the week before, once the Eagles got in, it was cheaper to fly via Asia
Singapore,
and then
yeah.
come back to Melbourne. It was like $2,000, $3,000, $4,000.
Madness. So I understand why some of these people are just getting a bit itchy with their trigger fingers on like Webjet or Flight Centre or wherever they might be. I would say, why not? Why not book a fully refundable one now, knowing that yes, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but if it pays off,
Insurance.
yeah, if it pays off, you've paid unders compared to everyone else, and if the dock has fallen a heat, you can cancel it, get your money back, and you'll be okay.
You'd also want to be pretty confident you're going to be able to get a ticket to grand final day.
I feel like
But
Freo,
you
might be okay.
You might be okay.
yeah, I don't know. It was just interesting to sort of see what are we at round 10, not even halfway through the year, and we've started to see
Confident.
Yeah.
Hey, I'd rather do that than get a Freo Premier's tattoo on my arm this early or something like that.
You can bookmark this point if their season derails. You can go to that bloke and say,
Yeah.
hey, what happened there?
Name and shame.
Yeah, like I said, we've got a lot to talk about on this podcast, so we're going to start kicking it through. We talked about the Dees a few times this year, but they keep surprising us. I think the term that I used in our query or our group chat when talking about the podcast throughout the weekend was, why haven't they been worked out yet? So they've been scoring heavily. They've beaten some really good teams as well. So the Hawks, the Suns, the Saints and the Lions, they're really good to watch. They're 5th on the ladder and, I don't know what else they can be doing, 7-3, and they're looking really nice. But Christian, I think that point is pertinent. Why aren't the good teams seemingly being able to work out the Ds? Because usually you see the high-flying, high-scoring, teams get worked out, clamped, and then everything kind of returns to the status quo and defence takes over. What's going on with Melbourne?
Yeah, a little bit of, I would almost classify it as the chaos that they bring Melbourne. So we know about the high scoring and, scoring over 100 points and all that sort of stuff, but breaking it down, they're 18th for disposal efficiency.
Is that an overrated stat?
It is. It's definitely if you sort of for players, and I think it's overrated in terms of the amount it's used, but it still tells you something. It just tells you how especially with disposal efficiency, sometimes a higher disposal efficiency could just mean you're playing basic footy. Sideways, backward, kicking and things like that.
Not taking risks.
So with Melbourne, the two numbers that stood out to me when you first look at their general profile, worst disposal efficiency of any team, but number one contested possession rate of any team. So their possessions, they're winning their highest rate of possessions from a contest of any team out there. So all this sexy scoring that you see is coming off the back of embracing the chaos, embracing that we've got to keep winning contests. We don't want to sort of get sucked into going sideways and backwards and slowing the game down. It's keep the game going fast, embrace your mistakes, get ready to win the contest. 4th for inside 50s, 13th for score per inside 50. So it's not the most perfect looking forward line and sort of clean entries. It's just get it in there as often as possible, win the contest and get it back. So I think that's the starting point of why it's so hard to beat a team that is almost playing on its passion and its desire and its intensity that's their starting point. It's not like, okay, with Brisbane, we know that they want to chip and take the 45, and we know that the Collingwood or Richmond was the high handball meters gained, and they've got a clear sort of way to move it. Melbourne's basically saying we'll move it any way we know how to, as long as we win. We get it to a contest and win that next possession. So little think better tackle differential in all but one game. It's another small stat, but they just don't get out tackled. They're working their ass off defensively.
Right, yeah.
So, but is this sustainable? Sustainable is not the right word, but does this gloss, does it fade? That sort of new coach, that enthusiasm, these sort of intangibles that you talk about, of passion and all that kind of stuff. Does it fade?
I've got a question on it. I mean, it hasn't at the moment. As I said, they're getting the sixth most metres gained from handball, but last for handball retention rate. So they've got the want and the desire to do it, but they haven't got the cleanliness. So it can go either two ways. It can just become much cleaner, and all of a sudden it's like, well, we've got the starting point, and now our skills are getting better. Or you can get broken down. So I have asterisks on the defensive watch. So when they don't have the ball, 13th for points against, 13th for stopping the opposition scoring per inside 50, 10th for points from turnover differential, not disastrous, and 8th for points from stoppage differential. Again, not disastrous, but sort of scored the most points, second most points from clearances of any team, but conceding the 4th most. So it's almost like that. Also, the kamikaze game. We're going to beat you one way. We're going to be vulnerable going the other way, but we'll back ourselves. And at the moment, it's working. It's catching teams by surprise, but you would think that, the sugar hit might not last, and when teams start to really work them out and maybe and we thought Hawthorn would do it, slow the game down, take the ball out of contest, don't get sucked into Melbourne's game, which Hawthorn ended up, basically trying to play Melbourne's way. I think that's the way to beat them, though, is as teams sort of try to get that control back into their games instead of taking away the chaos.
Some of that, I guess, would be as well just having that sort of, and you said it's sort of that youthful exuberance and being able to sort of run on air. And while they might not be as clean, they are just sort of, as a group, sort of all towards this goal. I want to talk to you, Jake, about what the Dees did in the off-season, or not even the off-season. They sacked Simon Goodwin, who had a pretty not similar profile, but also loved the contest, loved the hard stuff. So I guess Stephen King's kind of kept that aspect.
So that's what I'm saying. They didn't come in and change 30 players and lists. I know we're going to talk list movement now, but you've still got to work with what you've got. So you knew that you had a contested beast team, but it's what you're doing and sort of embracing that the continual forward ball movement and going to contest rather than just going, all right, let's try to win the contest, and then we'll try to play some pretty footy on the outside, which sort of they got lost with last year.
So the Dees probably made 3 off-seasons worth of big choices in the last sort of 12 months. Sacked Goodwin, and then also decided that they would move on from Petrarca and Oliver as 2 of their big guys. And then Stephen May deciding not to play as well at the start of this season, probably another one of those decisions. Yeah. So these are things that clubs don't do. They don't do it lightly. Clubs don't love to make upheavals like this, but they did. They brought in draft picks and they brought in the kids, and they said, we're going to play all of these guys, sort of these 0 to 20 gamers, and it seems to be working for now. Is that a style of list management you think that other clubs could employ? Is it something that you think other clubs could have employed in the past? That you look at sort of West Coasts of 2018 winning a premiership, trying to go again, and then falling in a heap sort of 2022 onwards. And being able to say, well, if we traded out or been able to get some capital for some good players and have the beauty of, or the benefit of hindsight, do you think West Coast would have done something similar?
Well, I think there's a few parts to this. I think the key point of all of this is, and the two most important players are Petrarca and Oliver. The big difference is they didn't want to be there. They wanted out. There's a big difference between West Coast. So you look at West Coast when they won the flag in 18. The following year they play finals, get beaten in a semi-final to the Cats. The year after that, back in finals. So it's not really until end of 2021 then when they finished that year with 4 straight losses, where you'd sort of look at that team and think, right, they're on the downturn now. What do we do? So go and have a look. I urge anyone to go and have a look at West Coast lists heading into 2022 and tell me, who would you have moved on? What would you have done? There weren't players at that point in time jumping up and down saying, I want out of here. So it's a very different situation. Would Melbourne have made the decision had Petrarca and Oliver said, we want to stay,
No,
we want to...
that's probably right.
They wouldn't have done it.
So is this... it's a lot of points I'm trying to get to here. Does footy need more ruthlessness in its list management then? Because if clubs have half an eye towards when are we going to actually contend, only one team can win a premiership each year. It's very hard. 18 teams, we know that. Soon to be more, right? What's the best way to go about this when you have the blueprint of Melbourne in front of you who can do this sort of, not rapid rebuild,
It's because there's so much... And rightly, I understand, there's so much emphasis on winning it. If one team wins it, the other 17 are bums. So everyone goes out of their way to try and win it, to appease the fans, lift the trophy, put another trophy in the cabinet. Anyone that doesn't has failed. So I guess what happens is every team just tries to go all out to win at all cost, and then it mortgages the future going forward. So if I said to you, what would you rather win? Your team wins 2 premierships in a row, but then you have 5 years in a row of finishing in the bottom 4 and just looking terrible, or you win 1 and then you have the next 5 years where you don't win another one, but you're kind of 10th every year. 10th, you have a year where you're 5th, you have a year where you're 8th, you're a midfield sort of team. You would take the 2 every single time, and everyone would. And that's why clubs do all they can to keep success going. And when you're close, do all you can to keep yourself in the window. That's why. So why would you move on to 2 players or any player that you believe can help you win at that time?
But are you realistic with your expectations of particularly, let's say Melbourne at that point? Were they going to contend again at that point if they kept those 2 players, Petrarca and Oliver? Probably not.
This year?
Yeah. I think if you're being absolutely realistic and honest with yourself as a club, and I think clubs aren't doing that enough, I think there's a lot of, and I sit on 2 fences. I sit on 2 sides of the story here. I love loyalty in footy. I think footy's great because it's got this sort of small world, old style charm where loyalty means something and you try and do things and all that. But the other side of it is, and you look at the broadcast money thrown around and how sort of indifferent the broadcasters are to fans and all this sort of stuff. If clubs were more brutal like they were in overseas markets, I'm not saying I want it to go down this way, you'd probably be better off as a club, and then having these sort of hard list calls that can make you top up. You see in NBA, it happens all the time. Stars get absolutely traded out left for the chopping block. You bring in draft picks over the next 3 years, and suddenly you've got super teams like Oklahoma City.
But how do we know that Melbourne would be in a better position right this moment if Christian Petrarca was still there?
You don't know. But I think what you can say is that you're looking at a 7-3 team when a lot of people, including I think the 3 of us on this podcast, thought they'd probably be bottom 6, maybe bottom 4.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I just don't see how a club can sell that to its fans when you're... Melbourne, to your point, yes, we probably thought they were, but West Coast going back to that stage, are they going to win the premiership and then say, see you later to 3 premiership heroes? It's not going to happen. How do you sell it to your fans?
No, the issue that they had was after 19, they didn't go back to back. They brought in Tim Kelly and went 3 picks over 2 drafts inside the top 25 that just went out the door. And then they've had a deficit ever since.
Because it was under the belief that we've just won a flag, we've just made it to the last 6 again and lost by a kick. We are one of the best 4 teams and we can contend again. And all of a sudden, it's what happens. This is
also in the midst of Geelong and Richmond being at the peak of their powers.
You only have so many opportunities to be one of the best teams.
Yeah.
And I think you've got to capitalise all you can. And that's why we see teams just pay overs for players.
One of the things I think with Melbourne is, spoke about just then, is the obsession with getting something in for Oliver, it's not about what's coming in, it's about what you can actually do with your club going up. So it's like, well, if we get rid of Oliver, we can now give Windsor and Langford and then it gives you guys more midfield time. So they didn't get anything back for Oliver. They got a pretty good return for Petrarca.
Yes.
But the clubs are obsessed with going, we got to get back. It's like, Now, hang on. Sometimes moving on this guy will help your next guy in line.
But you're also freeing up space for caps and free agents down the track as
and
well.
that's probably what West Coast did in terms of holding on to the guys. You knew that these guys, if you do look at that list that you said you look at the end of 2021, you could have predicted the 3 or 4 guys that were going to retire in the next 2 or 3 years and think, well, there's going to be too many retiring at once, so you need to stagger that. So it's different ones, but yeah, I would say with Melbourne, even just looking at those 2 players, Petrarca and Oliver, it shows that you don't always necessarily need to worry about what's coming back through from the club that you're trading with. It's about what can you do within your 4 walls by getting rid of someone to create room for other players. There's
another club that has a situation like this coming to a head. Just sacked a coach, has stars that are reportedly on the outer or content would listen to offers from elsewhere. If you were a Carlton list manager or a coach, would you entertain the thought of moving on for capital or for more opportunity for other players? Players like Patrick Cripps or Jacob Wiedering?
Well, they're the 2 names I was going to say. That's exactly what you're suggesting. By how would you feel as a Carlton supporter, or how would Carlton supporters feel? Please let us know. If that happened, if the Blues came out and said, we're moving on from these 2 guys.
I think you'd be gutted.
We're going to get whatever we can. The other thing is, they're not premiership players. It's very hard to sell that when they are premiership players, as Oliver and Petrarca are, or any of those West Coast players were. So as tough as it would be to swallow as a Carlton supporter losing Cripps and Wiedering, it's 5 times harder when they've just delivered you a premiership to say thanks, but see you later. That's why clubs don't do it.
What I think I'm trying to say is, and people can come for me, they probably will, the ruthless call would be to say, yeah, we can start fresh here. We can get a bit more. You talk about the Curnow trade and what that brought in from Sydney, the draft picks and what they've been able to look at, and then what Carlton has coming through the junior ranks and the draft and all that sort of, and the draft changes that have sort of hampered their ability to, pay less than value, to be fair, for guys like Cody Walker coming up. The ruthless call for the betterment of the club in the longer term, I think, would be to get rid of those players. But clubs don't make those calls. They're still romantic. They still want to appease the fans, and that's totally fine and great, and I love that. But it just goes to show that there can be this sort of tug of war between...
Is that where Sam Mitchell gets a big tick? From when he came in and what he did with Hawthorn.
Well, totally. I mean, even when he sort of moved out of Hawthorn, you can go earlier, back under Clarko, and
with him,
Jordan Lewis went out and he went to West Coast, and the picks that they got in were not that great. But I think it was Mitch Lewis, I think it was James Warple at those sort of 50, 60,
but
70.
To your point before about the Demons youngsters, it's not so much that we didn't get much for Sam Mitchell and Jordan Lewis. It's now, okay, some other guys now
getting opportunity. So it can be a mix of everything. And there's obviously no... silver bullet with list management, otherwise you'd have 18 premiers every
No, I see what you mean. I think the pendulum probably could swing a little closer to what you're saying, but I just don't think we're ever going to be in a position where it does swing all the way, because it's just not...
It's not how it works.
It's not how it works.
It's not how it works. And football's of families, and culture is important as well.
We don't want to go down the path of the NBA.
Even if you do go to trade Patrick Cripps, he has to agree to the clubs.
Of course,
you limit yourself to one. You don't get to have 17 clubs bidding for Patrick Cripps' fair value.
We'll send you to Freo. Yeah, right.
Anyway, food for thought. Nice debate. Let us know what you think at home. Don't come for me too hard. Every time we see North Melbourne, we'll go across town now, from Melbourne to North Melbourne, we see them take a couple of steps forward and you think, gee, have they finally turned the corner? Are we finally going to see a team that is possibly able to make top 10, play finals, play a wild card? But when they take those 2 steps forward, they invariably take 1, 2, maybe even more steps back. And they took a couple of big steps back on the weekend against Adelaide. Started quite brightly. They were pretty inaccurate, to be fair. And then they were just dominated. The second quarter was one of the worst quarters I've seen a decent team play this year, and it really hurt. I mean, they allowed 13 straight goals over the course of the game. Couldn't defend stoppage, and every Crows inside 50 looked like scoring at one point. And it was just dismal. For a team that sort of has had a bit of improvement, they're now 4-6, and I don't know where they're at. Christian, some of the stats that underline that domination by the Crows, please.
Yes, the second quarter, as you were talking about, 117 disposals to 43. I think that just... I don't think you need many more numbers than that. But
that's barely more than one a minute.
Where does that sort of...
Plus 74, second biggest differential since 2021. We have seen a couple... I think there was 1 or 2 quarters that were plus 100 for a team. It might have been Gold Coast GWS's baby years sort of thing.
That's
going back about 4 or 5 years, it's the second biggest we've seen. Contested possessions was 42 to 22, which is a smashing in itself. But then the tackles, 31 to 14.
The tackles is what I couldn't understand.
So the Crows had that much more of the ball.
Contested possession.
It has to be effort.
Yeah. So that was a massive one. 37 marks to 5, 16 inside 50s to 6. So that's just the second quarter. But that's now if we look at rounds 0 to 6 and when they sort of started okay, looking at compared to the last 4 weeks. And a lot of numbers have dropped off, but you will see it's the defensive / effort type numbers that are really dropped away. So points for dropped from 6th to 10th in that time. So yeah, a little bit of drop off. Points against, though, gone from 80, which was the 4th best up until round 6, 80 points per game conceded, to 119.5, which is the second most of any team. So gone from 4th to 17th for just points conceded in the last 4 weeks. Points from clearances, their own points from clearances, they were scoring 44 per game, which was first. They're now down to 31 per game, which is 12th, but it's also become from less opportunities of actually winning the clearances. The points from turnover differential, they've gone from 7th to 15th. Points from clearance differential, they've gone from 5th to 16th. Points against from D50, so just stopping the team from being able to sort of waltz end to end and score. 7th best round 0 to 6, 32 points per game given up from D50 chains since round 7, which is ranked last in that time.
5 goals a game just from straight transition
up
like
from
that.
14 points.
That was what was most evident, I think, against the Crows. Just how diabolically they were allowing the Crows to just stream forward and score with reckless abandon.
Yeah, so their raw pressure number has dropped from 4th to 6th. So it's probably not actually like when we get a chance to go at the ball carrier, we're going to go for it. But it's allowing, as we said, pressure factor sort of, if you're conceding too many sort of marks and long kicks that don't take too many possessions to get from end to end, you sort of limit your ability to put on pressure as well. So it's probably been more the setup ahead of the ball. Like defensive 50, contested possession differential, they had the 4th best defence. So if ball got to a contest in the opposition's forward line, they were the 4th best team from round 0 to 6. They're the worst team in the last 4 weeks, which isn't always. Usually that's your midfielders pushing back, creating extra numbers in your back 50, and you win more contests back there. The fours are just getting too much. So a lot of the numbers, as I said, in terms of when they've got the ball, they've dropped slightly, but it's when the opposition's had the ball, just how easily they've been able to do things in the last 4 weeks that makes it look like the North Melbourne of old, really.
They didn't have the strongest defence coming into the season. I think you probably look at the list and think, well, it's fine, but it's not going to win you any awards. But some of these numbers are truly diabolical. And you saw what they were earlier in the year to what they are now. And Christian, you sort of said the word effort. Is this the sort of effort that we want to be seeing from North Melbourne? I mean, 4 and 6, are you starting to get a bit concerned about what you're seeing for this team?
I think you have to be. I mean, you've just gone through some of those numbers, and it's not. You can look at that second quarter against the Crows where it was just as bad as it gets, but it's not just that quarter in isolation, as you said. You know what I haven't heard for a long time? Alistair Clarkson is a genius. You don't hear that no one says that anymore. And we all, and when I say we, I talk about footy media, the footy public, we all attributed seemingly 75-80% of Hawthorn's dynasty and the three-peat and the success to Alistair Clarkson. If we're going to be consistent, we have to attribute 75 to 80% of the blame for North Melbourne's ongoing failures and lack of improvement on him. He's the senior figure. I don't understand why people can't see both sides of this. You have to be consistent. If you're getting all the credit for the success, then you have to cop all of the criticism for the failures. And North Melbourne continue to, every time they tease a touch, it's 3 or 4 weeks of mediocrity or just poor results, and everything goes backwards after it. And as you said, it's 1 step forward, 2 steps back. This list is pretty good.
Pretty good list.
It's a good list. It's not a bad list anymore. It's not 21, 22, 23 when it just was at C. This is a pretty good list on paper. And I think this list compares to a team like St Kilda. I don't think if you side by side them, I don't think you'd have St Kilda that far ahead. Yet St Kilda at the start of the year seemed like a consensus top 6 team. Don't know where they'll end up finishing, but that's what people were expecting. North Melbourne has an even easier fixture. North Melbourne should be, at worst, finishing in the 9th, 10th sort of range. That's where they should be. That's where a lot of us thought they'd be, expected them to be this year. I think what they've dished up so far, and I know they've won 4 games, ultimately it's still been a bit under what we've expected.
Yeah, and they've got an interesting period coming up. I'll have to get this up, sorry, I'm going to have to do this on the fly. But they've got Gold Coast this week, and then Fremantle and West Coast. Both of those games are in Western Australia as well, because they have sold those games. So all of a sudden, Gold Coast free over the next 2 weeks. So you're looking at maybe 4 and 8. West Coast flip a coin. Obviously, they had a good result on the weekend in Perth, so you're not quite sure. Then Richmond and Essendon, and then Port Adelaide. So it gets a little bit easier after that. But it's just sort of barely middle of the road at this point. So
you can never, no matter who. And this is probably, I know it sounds quite simplistic, but this probably proves that North Melbourne hasn't really made as much ground as you would have hoped. No matter who they're playing, where they're playing, you never can feel confident in tipping them. You just can't. How can you? I don't care who they're playing. They can go and play West Coast, they can go and play Richmond, Essendon, and you might pick them, but I don't think it's with any degree of confidence that they're ever going to win. And that's a concern, I think.
One to watch North Melbourne. On this podcast, maybe about a month into the season, we were sort of looking at early premiership favourites after sort of 4 or 5 weeks, which is always tough to do, but No, I'm moving on to another club.
God.
Which is always tough to do, but we're in the caper of content, so you've got to come up with stuff, right?
It's tough.
We looked at the Dogs and Gold Coast as early premiership favourites. The Dogs started like a house on fire, if you remember. They were 4-0, but since then 1-5, with only a 2-point win over Port to show for the season. Their loss to the Blues was the latest disappointment. Injuries have been a problem, but we can't blame it all on injuries, can we, Christian? I mean, some of the numbers, again, you talk about maybe effort. It looks pretty similar for the Dogs at this point after the last sort of 6 weeks.
Yeah, so whether injuries is the starting point of it, you can look at some of the drop-off in numbers and say it's impossible just to blame the personnel that's not there. It's just been diabolical, as you said. So points for, 110 per game from round 0 to 4, third best in the comp. 69.7 per game since round 5, which is second last. And I think you actually had a look at...
Yeah, so
over 75 in that time, is that right?
Yeah, last 6 games they have scored only 75 points once in their last 6 games.
This is a side that last year was scoring freely.
100 points easily.
Coming into this season, we sort of said, again, kind of similar to North in terms of defensive stocks, you sort of said, well, they probably need to just blitz the opposition and blow them off the park because teams will still score against them, which has been the case. And their percentage sort of shows that for this year, but please continue.
Yeah, so exactly what we're saying at round 4, they were able to score from back 50, they were able to score from clearance, they were able to score from turnover, they were able to score from front half, so they sort of were getting you every way and just being able to put points on the scoreboard, and that's all dried away. So points against, 78 per game from round 0 to 4 was the 4th best, up until 103.5 per game, which is ranked 14th from round 5 onwards. Turnover points, they were only plus 4 points per game up until round 4, which was 8th in the comp, so still in the positive and mid-table. Negative 18, so almost 3 goals per game. They're getting outscored from turnovers since round 5, which is 16th. Clearance points differential gone from the second best team to the worst team. So it's gone from plus 15.5 to negative 16.7. So that's a 5-goal swing from clearances, from scores from clearances.
So who's been missing this year for a lot of the time? You look at Tim English in the ruck and you look at Libba in the middle. Both
Tim English has missed 4 games, 4 or 5 games.
Yeah.
And
4, yeah.
Yeah, you have some numbers on him and the drop-off with and without him.
So they're 5-1 with him this year and 0-4 without. I know that coincides with other injuries, Darcy, as I say, and all that kind of stuff. But 5-1 with him and 0-4 without, and the stats with and without him are kind of similar.
Yeah, that's almost what I'm doing here. So points have gone from 6th when he plays to 18th when he doesn't. So gone from 102 per game with him in the team to 60.5 without him in the team. Points against, almost 25 points more game given up when he's not playing.
Most important player in the league to his club.
Gone from 15th to 17th. Well,
yes.
In terms of,
correlation, causation, it's always hard to know. But
you were asking the question, I think, Tony, because you said at the start of the game, if you put English back in the team and take Bont out, it doesn't make it any better. So in terms of someone that's currently missing, he's clearly having the biggest impact on his team, whether that means he's the most...
But that clearance points differential stat, sort of round 0 to 4 and then 5 to 10, going from 2nd to 18th, plus 15.5, as you said, to minus 16.7. I mean, he's a key part of that. So is Libba as well.
Yeah, so even when he's in the team, they're plus 9 with him in the team and negative 23 points from clearances with him out of the team. So yeah, that's almost a 5 or 6 goal turnaround right there. But like little things like disposal differential, surely that's got nothing to do with him. They're plus 12 when he's played in the game, negative 56 without him, 17th. So whether that's just a coincidence there. Time in forward half, is locking the ball inside the forward half, which can help by winning clearances and having that ruckman set up behind the ball to sort of almost put teams off from kicking down the line and kicking that way. They're plus 2 minutes 47 per game when he was playing, or when he has played, which is the 5th best, to negative 12 minutes and 32 seconds when he hasn't played, which is the worst of any team in that time. So the ball's just living at the complete opposite end of the field when English isn't there. And yeah, you look at just their score per inside 50s has dropped 10% when he hasn't been there as well, which again could be part of it, is getting some cheap scores from forward clearances, which they haven't been able to do without him being in the team. But yeah, so some of those numbers there, you can clearly see where he would contribute and help with that number. But as I said, the disposal differential, I don't think he's not going to come in and get the disposal differential going the 80 the other way. So yeah, I think it's just happened. It's all come at the same time. They've had bad form with injuries at the same time. Correlations versus causation, because of the injuries. I think it's just a bad situation for the Dogs at the moment, where they're just sort of scrambling and chasing their own butt, if you want to put it that way, in terms of they've got injuries, but they've also got bad form and can't get themselves out of it. So,
are we putting a line through them I
Their
know it's
premiership
early.
hopes?
Yeah.
Where are they on the ladder right now?
I think it's
And
very
10th.
early. It's always very early to be.
10th, their percentage isn't great. I mean, last year it was... If,
The other way
if
around.
they were going to get in, it would be because of their percentage. A third best in the league or something like that by the end of the season. 137, I think it was. Now they're 10th with a percentage of 91.7. So teams below them with a better percentage. Yes, 1, 2, 3. 3 below them with a better percentage, and they're not better than anyone above them. So if it comes, push sort of comes to shove, they could find themselves on the outer. And this is including a top 10.
Yeah, big game this week against Melbourne, who we've just spoken about. And something I noticed, when the odds, we don't talk much about gambling on this show, but when the odds
Responsibly.
Popped up for this game, Melbourne was a $2.30 outsider. They are now favourite. Melbourne is now favourite.
Is that right?
Yeah. So, huge swing. Now, I put my expert tips in, and we pick our upset every week, and I put mine in before this change.
You're claiming that, are you?
I'm sticking with the upset.
Well, are you putting a line through them?
I don't like putting a line through anyone unless they are mathematically out of it, but I tell you what, it's been, and we sort of said it after the Darcy injury, it was the biggest change in the whole vibe from one week to the next with any team I can recall. They were unbeaten flag favourite to don't know if this team can make finals anymore. Off the back of a shock. It was a 40-point loss to the Crows, and then 40-point loss to Hawthorn during gather round, and then the 75-point loss to Geelong. Darcy gets injured.
Yeah.
Bontempelli's banged up. Libber's not playing. You've spoken about English and the stats there. It just key players not there, and it's having a massive impact. I don't know. I'm not going to write them off yet, but yeah, it's worrying signs.
Would you know, Jake, we copped a bit of flack on the socials a few weeks ago.
No.
No?
No, we don't cop flack.
I don't know if you remember this, but we sort of talked about St Kilda. It was after the Saints had sort of dropped to 2-4. Ross Lyons said after the loss to Adelaide, aside from the win-loss, we've improved. And it kind of went a little bit viral, and we decided to sort of fact-check him. And we're not saying fact-checkers in try and prove wrong. We're just checking the facts, which is exactly what we did. So we posted a graphic to our socials that had, 2025 to the first 6 weeks of 2026, points for, against, scores per inside 50, all this sort of stuff, all pretty similar. No real look at of improvement. A couple of numbers were a little bit better. This is some of the feedback we got. Proved his point. So Ross is correct. Look at the venue and the opposition that they've played.
Gee, keeping receipts.
Yeah, there's a few here. Fact check again, please. Look forward to the update. Got an update? All this kind of stuff. So here we go. Here we're updating you because we don't have an agenda. We don't care whether the Saints are doing well or poorly. We just wanted to see if what Ross was saying was correct. And at the time, it was a bit sort of iffy.
Yeah.
Christian, have now that they're 5-5, peeled off a few wins against some, not great teams. Have they improved?
So year on year, yes, they have in terms of the top line stats, looking at last year compared to this year. And you're right, a lot of it has come from round 6 to 10. So just quickly, round 6 to 10, they've been second for points scored against, second for points from turnover differential, second disposal differential, number 1 for score per inside 50. So there's a lot of things that they're doing really, really well. But you're right, you look at the opposition that you're playing against. We speak about that in the Champion Data Office as well. They're number 1 for score per inside 50 across the last 4 or 5 weeks. But it'd be interesting to look at the expected rating compared to the opposition you played. They probably were expected to finish as a top 3 or top 4 scoring team because they've played against some poor defences. But that sort of helped their numbers around 6 to 10. But yeah, comparing the 2 seasons and top line stats, as I said, so points for, 12th last year to 8th this year. So we always just want to compare rankings. Scoring's gone up, so there's no point comparing their average last year to this year as much as it's just are you getting better compared to the rest of the competition. Points against, they were 13th last year, 5th this year. Turnover points differential, 13th last year to 11th this year. So only a slight increase, but clearance differential, 14th points differential, that is from clearances. 14th last year to 4th best this year. Ball movement from one end to the other, 16th to 8th. Score per inside 50, as I spoke about, 8th to 1st. Defensively, it's stayed very, very similar, hasn't dropped off, so that defensively stayed pretty solid. But yeah, some of these offensive numbers and differential numbers have clearly risen from bottom half of the table to the top half of the table, really, in most of the key top line stats. So I think at this stage of the season, they've got an improvement. But yeah,
I'll give you
the fixture. It'd be interesting to visit this in another 4 or 5 weeks.
I tell you what, Saints fans, I'll give you a positive and a negative. The positive is Hugo Garcia is a gun. Love watching him play, and I think he's going to be a very, very, very good for your club.
You don't want to say the word star, do you?
Yeah, I'm very hesitant to say star because it is overused and I'm critical of that. But the other part of it is, and you sort of alluded to it at the end of what you were saying there, if we're going to keep receipts, we're going to keep coming back to it, let's come back to this in 3 weeks' time. You got Freo at Optus, Hawthorn at Marvel and Sydney at the SCG. So we can very easily see these numbers flip back to what they were when we did this 3 or 4 weeks ago anyway. So I think we have to wait to the end of the season to get a full understanding of whether or not they have improved year to year to have enough data, enough of a sample size.
Of course, the expectation was that they would.
The expectation was that they'd be, as I said earlier, a top 6 team, making finals, probably winning a final. Anything short of that would have been a bit unders, I think most people would have thought. So we'll see.
Finally, Christian, just on the Saints, they look to have worked out their ruck mix a little bit better the last few weeks.
Yeah, so that's been probably a big one for me, is watching DeConning and Marshall. So they're sort of usually ones going forward at the moment in recent weeks. I think they started doing it at the start of the year, but also a little bit more of the interchange bench being involved and sort of going through the 3 positions. Now they're probably less using the interchange bench and more using the wing. So they'll have the 2 ruckmen on the field. 1 ruckman will start on the wing. 1 ruckman will start in the centre bounce. The centre bounce ruckman, after he takes that initial contest, will push into the forward line. The wingman becomes the ruckman. Yeah. And it causes just that slight confusion. It might only be a minute or so of slight confusion, but it's one wingman going, hang on, am I supposed to follow that ruckman into the back line, and then I'm manned up on a...
So how long have you noticed that for?
So it's really happened since round 6 to 10. It's only 3 or 4 minutes per quarter. So they're just dabbling in it. They're not putting him on the wing and saying, here, you play as a wingman. It's just a few centre bounces where they'll set up and they'll know, okay, the rotation's happening. So looking at their ability to hit the scoreboard between the 2 has definitely improved since round 6, which is the time of, the period we spoke about in terms of...
Yeah,
sorry about that.
in terms of when we last spoke about them. So when we spoke about them at round 5, goals combined between DeConning and Marshall, 0. They had not kicked a goal between the 2 ruckmen. They've kicked 10 since round 6 onwards between them. Score assists, 7 in that time, up to 11. Score involvements, they got an extra 16 score involvements in 1 less game. So since round 6 to 10. So yeah, really figuring out how to get maximum value from both of these guys. Are still performing in the ruck as ruckmen, still doing quite well around the stoppages and clearances. But now being able to have that resting ruckman forward actually hitting the scoreboard has helped them as well.
That's all good stuff. I've got to address what just happened then. So how long have we been in this studio for?
3 years.
3 years. I have a big metal water bottle that I carry with me all the time. And I always put it under the desk to my left. And I reckon it was the first or second episode we ever did in here. I kicked it over during during a heated segment. Kicked it over and it clanged on the ground just as it did 30 seconds ago. And I said, if I ever do that again, I'll buy you all a beer. And I just did it again. So I owe you all a beer.
Keeping your own receipts.
Yeah, I do. I'm a man of integrity. So there you go. Sorry about that.
Might have sounded a bit strange. There you go. Hey, our favourite journeyman. We mentioned him on the pod a few times over the years as well. Tom Campbell announced he'd be hanging up the boots after 14 years, 4 clubs and, since 2012, just 58 games. So he played for the Dogs, for North, and St Kilda, and has been on the Dees list but hasn't got a run.
58 more than us.
It's a great effort, but just over the amount of time, I just thought we'd like to acknowledge sort of the great, one of the great journeymen of footy, and being able to obviously be such a great influence in the locker room to stay on a list for this long, but also obviously be good enough to play at the top level if and when required. Yeah,
well, just having a look back at his career, and I think Christian might have some numbers to sort of highlight that journeyman status that you touched on. But
with the greatest of respect,
of course. But 11 seasons he played, never got to 10 games in a season once.
Yeah, so he played a game in 11 seasons. He was on a list for 14 seasons. So we've included all 14. 0 of over 10. The next most to be on a list and never play more than 10 games is Daniel Curry. Was on a list for 9 seasons. North Sydney. Did he get to Gold Coast as well? Was there a third club involved for Daniel Curry?
There's some great names here.
But Dara Joyce is on the list as well. So currently at Brisbane. Has been around for 9 years with time at St Kilda as well. Has yet to play 10 games in a season. Probably on track to maybe fall short of that again this year, but he's very borderline. Jake Spencer, so you can almost notice the position here. So Tom Campbell, ruckman, 14 seasons, 0 over 10. Daniel Curry, ruckman, 9 seasons, 0 over 10. Dara Joyce, key defender, so a little bit different. Jake Spencer from Melbourne, a ruckman, was with them for 9 seasons, never played more than 10 games. And you've got Adam Morgan, Archie Smith,
Another ruckman,
is a
yeah.
ruckman off the top of my head. Fraser McGuinness was a key position player. Josh Cowan at Geelong was more of a halfback, but Luke Loudon, another ruckman, 7 seasons on the
You know
list.
what it reminds me of? It's a real backup quarterback sort of thing. You get sort of paid to just sort of be there on the
Don't think you
sideline.
get paid as much as them.
No, definitely not. But like you're on lists or you're on teams for a long time, but you probably don't see a lot of action. The backup ruck or the third ruck on the list is very much that sort of third string quarterback who's got the earpiece on the side of the game.
You probably also don't cop a huge amount of criticism too, because with all due respect, there's probably not a huge amount that is expected of you. But shout out to, one of the more unique footy careers.
Yeah, from a guy who played 58 games to a guy playing his 433rd this weekend. It'd be remiss of us not to mention Scott Pendlebury.
Wait, is Scott Pendlebury breaking a record? I haven't heard much about that.
I was wondering where you're going. So he's going to break the record this week, going to wear the golden 10 on his back and all this sort of stuff.
In a word, do you like that? Do you like the 10?
Yeah, I do, yeah. Well, I mean, North did it for Burma, the 427 on the front. That was fun.
It wasn't a golden number.
Gold is, I mean, look, white, black and gold works really well. I don't know if it would have worked with blue and white. So but you just do what you can.
I'm right in saying he will be the only one wearing a gold number. It's not, they're all,
No,
the rest of Collingwood aren't all going to
him.
wear gold number. Yeah.
Okay, so all of the North people wore it. He might wear 12 of them, apparently.
They might have, I don't know if they're going to have a 433 like badge on the...
Well, he's got there's been a couple of things I've seen that have like some sort of
But he's
logo.
Definitely the only one wearing a gold number, as far as I'm aware.
Are you going to buy his wine, by the way? You're a red wine.
Bit pricey. Bit pricey. And I tell you what...
$150 for a Pinot?
I'm not going to criticise Scott,
Might be
but
very
I
good.
tell you what, have a look on the website. Have a look where he's selling this wine for $149 for a bottle.
Yeah.
That retails for, well, I'm not going to speculate, but probably not $149. What I'm unsure about is it's marketed as a signed bottle from Scott Pendlebury. I'm not criticising him, but it looks like the signed is just his signature on the label, as in printed on the label.
They may come with personal ones. We don't know.
Like it's been signed.
We are speculating. There is room for a signature, I guess, somewhere.
You'd want it to be signed for $150, I reckon.
Yeah. Who's it made by?
I think we might have to buy one for
Yering
research.
Station in the Yarra Valley. I reckon their regular old Pinots retail
$25.
for about $30.
Yeah, I reckon we buy one, expense it, and that'll be the beer I owe you.
We'll see how it is. We might come back with a review.
Just getting back to
Pendlebury.
What do you want to ask? Because
Yeah, I was getting there. Just your favourite memories. I mean, it's almost paralysing, too many to choose from, too many games and all that kind of stuff. We were talking with JB, our resident Collingwood nuff up in the office as well, about what his sort of favourites were, and just wondered what your thoughts were on his career and some of the iconic moments.
There's the bouncing the ball on the pigeon. There's the Scott Emblery that wasn't even really.
These aren't really him playing.
There's maybe to sum up
133 games you remember for bouncing the ball at the pigeon.
and someone pronouncing his name wrong. No, in all seriousness, I said to you just before we started, I hadn't thought about this at all. Has any player provided more to one club than Scott Pendlebury has to Collingwood? If you were drafting first, second, third players and what they've given to the club and the sport in their time, sure, you can argue that players have hit greater heights at various points. But has anyone done so much for so long?
Well, literally no.
Well, not the length, no, obviously. But in terms of, it's not just like he's stumbled his way to 433 games. His baseline floor has been as high as any floor we've ever seen. You can say that Dustin Martin, better player, Gary Ablett, better player, name who you want. But I'm not sure that the lowest point of their career was better than what Pendlebury's is. And for someone who has played as long as he has, I know we joke about all of this stuff and the money and the gold jersey and all that stuff. For someone who's played as long as he is, it is extraordinary that he's never really had no one's ever had any negative to say about him. What his floor has been as high as anyone.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Well said. Congratulations to Scott. Go out and have a great game and in front of 90,000 people at the G. It's no better way to do it. I know that there's been debate about whether he should have been rested or whatever, and if he needed to be rested, and Collingwood losing tight games in the meantime, or the draw against Hawthorn, but. It'll be a wonderful occasion, and if you can get down as a Collingwood fan, if there are any tickets left, I don't know if there are. You should.
I think there are.
Yeah.
Jared was saying that there is still some tickets left. If the crowd figure starts with an 8, is that disappointing?
Yeah, probably, yeah. I mean, Dusty 300 got...
93 or something?
Yeah, against Hawthorn, to be fair. But the Collingwood Army, biggest in Melbourne. So...
West Coast fans travel? Up and about?
Well, I don't know about that. Booking their tickets, $1,200.
Question without notice. Will we be here talking about him at 450?
Yes, I think so.
You think he'll play on again?
Yeah, I think so.
Because he won't get to 450 this year, will he?
No.
No, the maths doesn't math.
No, I think he does.
Is he like Patrick
hang on a
Dangerfield?
minute.
Similar?
Hang on, hold the
I want
phone.
to go first. I want to go. Kind of like Patrick Dangerfield. Is he worth a list spot to play
Yes.
every second week?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, okay.
Can he get to 450 if he didn't rest any game and they played the 5 finals?
The wild cards.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
He'd be close.
But they're resting him.
That's the problem. They're not going to play him all the way through. But I think he will. I think he plays on next year for sure. I mean, the 2 games ago, we saw what he did on Anzac Day.
Yeah.
Why would he retire? Maybe going back to what your theory, maybe Collingwood should cash in on him now and move him on to Perth.
That's disingenuous.
You just want to get rid of all the stars.
Disingenuous. Is the hype justified or is it hyperbole? We're going from one guy who you just said, has anyone had a bad word to speak about him, to a question, and not specifically about this next player, by the way, but you'll see what I mean. Bailey Fritsch is the hungriest player in the league.
Yeah, he's on the Mount Rush. Well, he's on the podium. I'm going to go 3 instead of 4. He's on the podium. I haven't thought about this in
Burnt
order.
Latrell Pickett on the weekend is one of the
Shocking.
all-timers.
Absolute shocker. I reckon my top 3, not in no particular order, is Bailey Fritsch, his teammate, who admittedly has got a little bit better, playing a little bit more time in the midfield, Cozzy Pickett. And I tell you what, this guy could be number 1. And I love him. But Ben Keays is a shocker. Ben Keays would steal a goal off his own son. Did you see? Was it Josh Rochelle that was being held and like sort of scrambling the ball forward, and Keays just kind of came out of nowhere and took it in the goal square?
It's celebrating.
Yeah, it's like, nah, you can't do that.
Any other nominations, Christian?
Well, yeah. Looking at it's quite funny. So the 2 names you brought up, I've gone 2 very very quick, dirty stats, if you will. Looked at how many kicks you've had in the forward 50 and how many shots at goal you've had, and just done a percentage. So obviously you can have shots at goals from kicks that aren't in the forward 50, so that's not necessarily 1-to-1. But yeah, looking at that stat, and it's like Josh Tracy's had 43 kicks inside 50 this year, and he's had 43 shots at goal. So he's at 100% of almost all of his kicks inside 50. You expect to be a shot at goal.
But then what percent of them are set shots?
Yeah. So they're all key forwards at the top. Going to Bailey Fritsch, I've gone to the guys that have had at least 40 kicks inside 50 this year, which there was 37 of them, and he's got the 36th lowest percentage. So he's had 38 kicks inside the forward 50, only 26 shots at goal. So comes down to the second, comes down to the second lowest percentage. The only guy lower is Connor McDonald at 50%, who is clearly, not.
You know what the problem is?
He doesn't mind a goal.
The problem is, all it takes is you have 2 egregious ones and you just skyrocket on the list of hungry players.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
And that's what happened to him. Because
the recency bias, maybe. But yeah, then I looked at, the other one is quite funny. So I looked at your goal. So the last 3 years, top 50 goal kickers and how many score assists they've had. So Ben King's only had 17% amount of score assists than he's had goals. Had 199 goals in that time, 34 score assists. So just looking at
Ben King's a statistical anomaly at these times.
King's up there, Georgiades, Larkey, Oscar Allen, Charlie Curnow, Jake Waterman. They're paid to be your goal kickers. It's just funny that the other name you mentioned, Ben Keays, is actually the 3rd lowest on that group. So in that time he's kicked 68 goals, but he's at 89 score assists. So he sort of had...
I said, maybe it's just you do it halfway to get a bad reputation.
But both times I sort by the list, the 2 names that you guys have picked are Fritsch and probably. One name I will give you that jumps up quite high, Chad Warner for Sydney. So nearly every time he gets the ball within 60 metres out from goal, he's going for goal, and sort of the numbers.
He'd have a licence too, though.
Stripping out all the key forwards, he's got the highest percentage of anyone, and he's not. I would have expected a general forward to be there. He's a mid forward, and he still plays more.
I'd probably throw Petrarca in that category as well. These mid forwards that pretty much every time they're in 50 having a kick, it's going towards the sticks.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting stuff. We're going to go back to Scott Pendlebury. So speaking of his golden 10, you and I were talking about this in the office. You and I were talking about this, and I quite like this. All Australians, Brownlow winners, Coleman winners,
yes.
and the Rising Star should all have, for the next season, like the Premiership winners do, have some sort of patch or acknowledgement on their Guernsey of their achievements.
Yeah, I've been saying this for years. I think that is 100% justified. I think the AFL needs to find a way to do it, and I get that their sponsorship and marketing ads...
Directly
ads
below the
base,
AFL
but surely
logo?
they can find a spot for it. I think we should 100% have the Brownlow medalist, Coleman medalist, and Rising Star winner from the previous year should have a patch of some sort, either below the AFL emblem, on the back, somewhere to display it. The Premier also wears it, has the
gold,
cup.
yeah.
And the other thing that I would love to see, maybe even more so than the others, is all 23 All-Australians from the previous year to be honoured in some way with a patch the following year. Because how many of the All-Australian team from last year could you name right now?
Yeah.
I would easily forget 5, 6, 7 players. Oh yeah, I forgot they were All-Australian. I think it happens right at the end of the year once the interest has gone away, no one's thinking about footy, and then by the time footy starts back up again, everyone's forgotten, and they sort of aren't recognised. You know, every time Matt Rowell gets the ball, they say, "Oh, Brownlow medalist from last year," but no one will say, "Oh, he was an All-Australia from last year." It's forgotten. So having a little patch on the, I don't know what you'd have. You wouldn't have AA.
I don't mind it.
Well, probably not the greatest.
Alcoholics Anonymous.
Well, yeah.
Sure.
But you can have something, whether it's maybe you have the blazer or some little icon that signifies
Don't mind it.
you were an All-Australian the previous year. I think it's a nice little touch to what is supposed to be a very select club each year.
Fair enough. And final one, Christian, one for you. Patrick Cripps plays his best footy the week after a coach has been knifed at Carlton.
It certainly looks like it. So
Big enough sample size.
We've got three examples of it, of him playing for a new coach mid-season, so not playing for every new coach's first game. So if they came in round one, i.e. Bolton and Ratton, things like that. So, remember, I think, so John Barker, took over from Malthouse. Yeah, I haven't got the previous coach listed down here. So when in John Barker's first game, Patrick Cripps had 25 disposals, 17 contested possessions, 9 clearances. In Teague's first game, 38 disposals, 16 contested possessions, 8 clearances. And 4
goals.
Yep, and 4 goals. And the most recent one, 29 disposals, 17 contested possessions, and 8 clearances. So
and 2 goals.
Looking at the averages in that time, so his average in those 3 games is 30 disposals, 17 contested possessions, and 8 clearances, which is higher than his 25.5 disposals per game across his career. 14.5 contested possessions and 7 clearances. So, yeah, especially those contested possession numbers. To have 17, 16 and 17 in your new coach's first game, you can see someone that's clearly sort of,
feels like
as
he
he always does,
take on
putting
a bit
the team
more
on the shoulders and sort of saying, yeah.
You know what I'd be doing?
Doing it every week?
I'd be shipping Josh Fraser out. Get what
This
you can
week.
for him. He's in some hot demand right now. Ship him off and bring in the next guy.
All right, that'll do. Red Time with JB and Coxie every week. Had some strong thoughts about Pendlebury, by the way. Went quite viral. Mason.
I don't know how long we've been going today, but at probably 40-minute mark, we hadn't mentioned Scott Pendlebury. I reckon we've mentioned him 10 times since. So,
doing my best here.
But I actually really enjoyed what he had to say. He was very much sticking up for his former teammate.
Not a lot of questioning from JB about whether it sort of
Bit of a
falls
ding
within
on JB's journalistic
salary
integrity.
cap and all this sort of stuff. Just could have asked a few questions of Mason instead of just nodding along with JB. But you can catch them YouTube or podcast wherever you get those. Of course, ESPN Footy Central, Derm and Hirdy. Disney Plus and YouTube every Wednesday.
Yeah, what happened to Hirdy? Did you see? I know.
Yes. So he just clarified on the ESPN Footy Central. Choked on some meat. Nearly died. Had to go to hospital.
In there for a few hours. How can you leave a piece of meat in there for so long?
Choked on some meat is like.
The comments weren't very forgiving for poor
That's so good.
He choked on some meat. And Tim just plays into it as well. Sorry, it's good stuff. Go check it out. Like I said, Disney Plus streams every Wednesday. And we put them on YouTube too. You put us on YouTube if you want to watch us on YouTube. Don't know if you want to, but we are there.
The option exists.
Good stuff. To everyone at home, we'll speak to you in the next episode.